So if you are at the end of your pregnancy and maybe there's a little nudge being placed on you for when is this baby coming, have you considered induction? Or maybe you're just so pregnant and fed up and you want to encourage your baby to engage into the pelvis, this is the video for you. Let's talk about helping your baby engage. So one of the first things that I love to talk about is, yes, the movements that we can do to help our babies engage in the pelvis and how we can create space from a biomechanics perspective, but also when we have a very tight pelvic floor, when we are holding a lot of tension in our pelvis, we are often feeling a lot of fear. So fear release can be really powerful here. I have a whole separate video around releasing fear and how we can do a 6-step fear release process. But in a nutshell, leaning into those fears, writing them down, getting into the nitty-gritty of what they really are. Maybe it's a case of writing them down and then burning them in a fire, or putting them in your shoe and going for a walk in the forest and just stamping those fears out. When we remove fear from our bodies, we can create space in our pelvic floors, in our pelvis, and baby is much more likely to engage. So that's the first thing that's worthwhile addressing if we're talking about helping our baby engage in the pelvis. The next thing that I want to look at is how we can mobilize our bodies to create balance in the pelvis. One of the things that we forget about when we talk about balance and space is just how tied in everything is. So if we are carrying tension maybe in our calves, we are also more likely to be experiencing tension in our glutes and more likely to be experiencing tension in that QL. And if we can begin by releasing that tension, the balance takes place. So let's look at one movement in particular you might have heard of already, people doing curb walking to encourage baby to engage. And the reason that that works is because it releases tension on the quadratus lumborum, or otherwise known as the QL. The QL is almost like a guide wire that works up through our bodies, and if we can release that guide wire and create balance there, our babies are more likely to drop and to engage into the pelvis. So instead of doing curb walking, if you don't feel like getting up and walking, a movement that you can do just while you're sitting and watching TV is what we call the glute scoot. And this movement was coined by Lindsay McCoy of the Body Ready method, and I just absolutely love it. So it looks very similar to how a dog, if you have a pet, wipes their bottom along the floor. So it looks ridiculous. But what you're doing is you're thinking about lifting the hip, lifting the bottom off the floor and moving forward. And the right side and the left. Rowing a boat, moving forward. And then you can go backwards. It's actually a lot more difficult than it looks. But just doing a small amount of this per day will help to really encourage that guide wire for baby to find space in the pelvis. So one of the other things that we have to think about when we want our baby to engage nicely in the pelvis is how much balance do we have between our head, our shoulders, our hips? Is there nice alignment there? And sometimes if we're doing a lot of sitting, if we're doing a lot of sitting on the sofa, sitting in our desk chair, our office chair, sitting in front of the TV, maybe we're carrying our children a lot, we can get out of balance and we can get a lot of tension in this front body. So now we're going to do what I call an aligned side lunge to be able to create that balance and strength again, balance and stretch. So one leg in front of the other. I'm going to encourage you to do a tilt under here, so tucking your tailbone under. You might already feel the stretch here. And then just to add into this stretch, we're going to do a side bend and really thinking about breathing into the ribs here. So we're stretching up on that same side where we should be feeling the stretch in the hip flexor. A few nice deep birth breaths here. And then as with every movement that we do, if it's one-sided, we make sure that we are doing it on the other side as well. So that is the aligned side lunge. So when we talk about creating space in the pelvic inlet, this area here in which our baby is going to engage into the pelvis, it can be really helpful for us to find movement within these holds. So what we're going to focus on now is getting into a nice wide-legged squat, and pairing that with some internal rotation can help us find that space. So we're going to rotate the knees in and out. And you can see already what sorts of space and movement can happen within the pelvis. So adding in this movement and making it accessible during our pregnancies also creates that space and mobility that is going to allow us the options for mobilizing during our labor. So the next exercise that we're going to do is the psoas release. And I'm finding more and more that almost every one of us could do with releasing that psoas muscle. We spend so much time sitting in our cars, sitting in our desks, carrying a lot of tension. And this one can feel like a really lovely somatic release. The easiest way that I find to do this in pregnancy, because with PGP, if you're having pelvic girdle pain or just a really large gravid uterus, laying down on our backs can become a little bit more uncomfortable. So doing a standing psoas release, which is what I'm going to do now, is a lovely way to just unwind and unravel that tension. So you're going to find a block, something to stand on. It could be a yoga block, it could be some big heavy books you've had from university. Standing up on that block, holding something for balance, and what you're going to do is just let that leg hang and slowly start to move like a pendulum. Slowly finding that movement. It might get faster, more and more. If you were going to have someone beside you, they could help you find that movement. And just, it feels so, so lovely. And then slowly coming to a pause. Being mindful not to let your whole pelvis come along for the ride. It's just the leg that is swinging like a pendulum. And then again, alternating to the other side with every one of these one-legged movements. The final movement that we're going to do is a fantastic movement that works really, really well, particularly if you are having any Braxton Hicks contractions, or in fact, if you are in early labor. So in order for us to find more space in that pelvic inlet, we want to be doing a tuck under. So think of tucking the tailbone underneath. This anterior tuck paired with a lift of the belly and a curvature of the upper spine creates space in the pelvic inlet. A really nice way to know you're doing this properly is to come to a wall and then think, okay, tuck the pelvis under, and then lifting your belly. So you want to ideally be doing this through 10 contractions if you're having them. If you're not, it can also be a really lovely way to feel baby's head pressing down. So lifting up the belly, and 3 deep breaths. You can also do this partnered. So the birth support person or your birth partner can come in behind you and do the belly lift for you. You might find it's more comfortable for you to do yourself. I will say that this one is particularly intense if you're also having contractions at the time. So be ready for that strengthening, that stretch, that lengthening. It can feel like a lot, but it works really, really well.